Hello, everyone. I am back with another Raw Dog Reddit reaction. This is where I choose a Reddit post based on the title alone, involving someone seeking advice about their sex life, and I give my raw, unfiltered thoughts and reactions to it. I'm trying something a little bit different tonight. I'm choosing a title that isn't necessarily about sex, but more focused on dating. I thought this might be a fun one to explore together. The title of this post is, "What do women necessarily mean when they say they didn't feel spark or chemistry with a guy?" If you are new here, my name is Holly. I am a licensed therapist specializing in sex therapy, here to share my knowledge and answer your questions around all things related to a healthy and pleasurable sex life. I have some thoughts and perspective on the idea of chemistry already. So let's read and I'll share my thoughts. I'm a below average gremlin, so getting girls on my looks has never been my strong suit. So I had to tailor my efforts into things like personality and getting to know the girls. But I've also gotten a lot of girls who give me the "I don't feel the spark or chemistry" speech. I'm curious for the women. What exactly can you remember that a guy you slept with or dated made you feel connected or have chemistry with? This is a man writing to women looking for some answers here about why he seems to get this speech of women not feeling chemistry. He refers to himself as a below average gremlin. I'm going to assume that that means he considers himself to be below average in level of attraction or stereotypical male attractiveness in our culture. So he's really putting a lot of his effort into personality and, getting to know the women that he's dated. But he wants to know what exactly it is that women are saying they feel when they feel chemistry with someone. I have a lot of thoughts about the concept of chemistry in general. The problem with chemistry is that we're putting a lot of emphasis on something that isn't tangible, something that you can't really define or measure or track in any kind of meaningful way. It's based on a vibe or a general feeling that you have with somebody. When I imagine what someone means when they say they feel chemistry with someone, it's that they feel a sense of connection. Maybe there's some adrenaline that they're feeling with this person, butterflies in the stomach, or the conversation is flowing really well and they feel like things are moving smoothly. It might also mean that somebody feels like they kind of come alive or they feel excited. I think that depending on who you ask what they mean by their experiencing chemistry with someone, you might get some slightly different answers. And I think that comes down to sort of how do you track and define this thing called chemistry? Kind of makes me think about, the idea of love. How do we measure that? How do we know if we love someone, if we're in love, what kind of love it is? And depending on who you ask, you're probably going to get a different type of answer. So right off the bat, I think it's kind of hard to even know for sure if we're all talking about the same thing, which is one of the struggles when talking about chemistry. Yet, culturally, we're taught this message that so much comes down to chemistry. You have to feel chemistry with someone to know that you're going to hit it off with them. And what that does to somebody who's dating is put them in a situation where they are, going on these dates and they're trying to gauge whether or not this person might be they might be compatible with this person based on a general feeling or vibe, or maybe some subtle cues that are happening. And what we're maybe not as focused on in terms of what allows someone to be compatible are other things that are just as important, or in my opinion, perhaps more important. Things like shared values and core beliefs about what it means to be in a romantic relationship, what their goals of the future look like. Do you want the same things? Are you like-minded with, let's say, religious beliefs or political beliefs? What are the expectations you have in terms of division of labor in a household? If you are potentially going to live together and, merge a life with somebody, do you want kids? Do you not want kids? What do career goals look like? I think that what can happen sometimes is that you could be dating and perhaps you are thinking about all of those other areas I just mentioned. Shared values, core beliefs, future goals, lifestyle choices, all of those variables can really determine whether or not somebody is compatible with you. And let's say all of those things seem to be generally in alignment, but you're lacking some sort of feeling that's attached to that, or some sort of vibe that you're bouncing off of with this other person, and seemingly lacking in chemistry. It's easy for someone to say, oh, I don't know, I just didn't feel drawn to this person. I didn't feel a pull or excitement or butterflies or, get a tingle through my body. And so I guess this person isn't right for me. And I think sometimes that's an unfair expectation. There's a lot going into modern dating these days, especially online dating. You're choosing people based from an app, based on appearances and maybe very basic information about this person. And then you are having some sort of limited virtual communication, some chatting back and forth. Maybe you set up a date, and then there's this expectation that you are going to, gauge whether or not you should have a second date with them or a third date. And it's a lot of pressure and expectation to sort through all of the areas that could determine whether or not you're compatible with someone, and then hope for a feeling to occur with this stranger, this total stranger that you just met. Yeah, and he gets the speech of, I don't feel the spark or chemistry. So yeah, the spark, that's another, term for chemistry, just feeling a spark. And no way of gauging when it would happen, how it will happen, what initiates such a sensation or feeling. It's a lot. It's a tall order. Dating nowadays is a lot for people to navigate and to sort through, and it feels like a lot of pressure and a lot of expectations very quickly in meeting someone. I think we're missing the idea of something called more of a slow burn. Connection and vulnerability and intimacy, even attraction, is something that can build. It can start very small and slow, and it can grow as you get to know someone. Some people start to feel more heightened levels of attraction and interest and appreciation for who a person is as they slowly get to know them and spend more time with them and learn about this person. It's not something that you can fabricate or allow to happen necessarily with everyone, on a first or maybe second date. However, there's this feeling of not wanting to waste your time or wanting to waste someone else's time. I think that is part of the struggle with making a connection, especially if you're expecting there to be chemistry and chemistry relatively early on. It's also possible that, this individual is getting the I don't feel the spark, I don't feel the chemistry speech as a form of rejection. It's kind of a way to let someone down or let someone know that you're not interested in dating them or seeing them again. If you're identifying this arbitrary, abstract idea of, I just didn't feel a spark or connection, you can't really argue with that. There's nowhere to go with that. Oh, you don't feel the connection, you don't feel the chemistry. Okay, and it's sort of like conversation ends there, rather than, well, it sounds like you really want to travel a lot in the future, and I'm somebody that's not a way I would want to spend my finances, or sounds like you want kids one day and I don't, or I came to realize through our conversation that we have really different beliefs around spirituality, and or we have really different lifestyles. Uh, are really into like fitness and go to the gym 7 days a week, and I'm someone that likes to sit on the couch and read books. I don't know. Those are all like more concrete reasons for why you could identify you're not compatible with somebody. And I think it takes a lot of courage to say, I'm so sorry I don't, find you attractive, or I'm not feeling the attraction to you. It's also okay to have preferences. It's okay to find certain characteristics or aspects of someone's appearance or qualities that they have or personality traits as attractive or not. It's okay to have those preferences. I think it takes a lot of courage to tell someone that. So this individual, he's describing himself as a gremlin. So if he is considered to be below average in terms of conventional, beauty, or masculine attractiveness, then this could be a way that some of the women are, letting him know they're not interested. Just, I don't have the chemistry. And so I think that's a possibility as well. There's a couple of resources that are coming to mind here that I would encourage anyone who's listening to consider giving a read if you want to learn a little bit more about maybe some different perspectives here. The first one is a book I read a while ago called How to Not Die Alone. I will link the book below in the description box. And from what I'm remembering, the woman who wrote the book was working for, I think it was Hinge. Don't quote me on that, but she worked for Hinge for a long time and took a real curiosity to the dating world and dating life and how to actually help people discover how to connect with others and how to be compatible, especially with modern day dating and utilizing apps, as well as meeting people in a more organic way or in the wild, so to speak, if you're not interested in using the apps. I thought the book was really, really helpful. It certainly supported me in offering support to clients that I work with that are struggling with dating and meeting someone, maybe helping them adjust their expectations or consider strategies that have shown to be helpful in finding somebody that you actually feel compatible with, and when to move forward, when to move on. One of the things I thought was interesting about what she had to say in this book was that sometimes the feeling of chemistry can be confused with feelings of anxiety. And a lot of that can come down to your attachment style, which for the purposes of this video, I'm not going to dive too deeply into. But if you are somebody who tends to have a more anxious attachment style, and you meet somebody who maybe is a bit more avoidant, what that can do is cause an increase in anxiety. Their tendency to be, let's see, avoidant could be confused with being a bit mysterious or a bit aloof or maybe a little bit hard to get. And it intrigues someone who's maybe a bit more anxious, and they can confuse those feelings with feelings of chemistry, that there's this like liveliness that they feel within themselves. The butterflies in the stomach is very closely linked to a feeling of uneasiness or instability, and that when we meet somebody that feels easy, or they're very transparent and maybe they feel very secure, sometimes that experience can feel a bit lackluster, maybe a bit boring for somebody. And then they think, I guess I don't feel any chemistry with this person, when really that individual could be very healthy and a wonderful partner. So chemistry is a thing, and I just think that we put a little bit too much emphasis on it. I think we miss a lot of really important pieces of dating and compatibility with potential partners by focusing on this feeling that we can't produce ourselves and that just is supposed to happen. It makes me think a lot about what we talk about on this channel in terms of how we perceive sex should be with a partner. We should just both look at each other and know and spontaneously be in the mood, and it should feel easy and natural. And if it's not, then that means something's wrong. I kind of see dating a little bit similarly, that we just expect this feeling to, this falling in love chemistry feeling to just happen, and it will happen with the right person regardless of who they are, where they come from, what our values and goals are, that against all odds, love will conquer all. And we ride too much of the experience based on feelings. And feelings are just one piece of the whole puzzle. You also have to kind of use your mind and your logic and your reasoning to guide you through the dating world and that experience. Sometimes chemistry, that can even be a sign of potential problems. If you don't have a really good understanding of yourself, your attachment style, the types of people we feel drawn to and gravitate towards, we often gravitate towards people that feel familiar to us because that's what we know and what we're used to. Even if old patterns and old habits, old relationship dynamics aren't necessarily healthy for us. So it can help to have a therapist if you're able to help navigate you through this process. I think it can be really beneficial to help you understand yourself and guide you through all the trials and tribulations of dating in order to find somebody that you truly are compatible with and that you think will be a healthy match for you. The other resource I will mention is an article from Dear Sugar, also known as Cheryl Strayed. She used to write a advice column on the internet. People would write to her with their problems, and she would respond in a very kind and honest way. She wrote the book Wild. You may have heard of it. They made a movie of the book. It's a memoir based on Cheryl Strayed's life. Reese Witherspoon plays her in the movie. It's actually really good. But she also published a book called Tiny Beautiful Things, which is a collection of the entries that she received when she was writing as Dear Sugar and her responses to those individuals. And one individual wrote to her talking about how he feels he is too unattractive to find romantic love. And she writes back, and it's such a beautiful response. The name of the advice column is titled Beauty and the Beast. In her response to this individual, she shares a story about one of her dear friends who had a similar struggle. And I believe her friend was disfigured from severe burns on his body. And the one thing that he was always striving for was romantic love. And she shares his story with the individual who wrote to her. It is sad, but there's a beautiful message, I think, in her writing. So I will link that article below as well for you to check out if you're curious to hear her thoughts and advice. She's an amazing writer and a beautiful soul, and just gives the most compassionate and honest advice to people. I'm curious to hear what some of the top responses are in this Reddit post. When I was dating, my wording of this concept was, this wasn't the connection I'm looking for. And what I generally meant by it, being around you is work for me, and it should be easy. That doesn't mean it was an unpleasant time, but there are some people where socializing with them sustainably is consistent effort, and some people where it's just natural and effortless. Think about being at a party and having to make small talk conversation with a nice person, but someone you're ultimately not really on the same wavelength as you. Maybe like a parent of a friend of yours. They're nice, you're nice, but ultimately you're trying to be a polite person and talk to them until the minute it's socially acceptable to go do something else. Now think about that feeling versus seeing a friend you haven't seen in a while, or someone where it's very clear from the first time you hang out that you're going to be buds. It's fun, it's invigorating, You're not constantly thinking a few steps ahead about what you should say next. That's the feeling I was looking for when I was dating. It's interesting. I think this person did a really nice job of trying to concretely describe what maybe chemistry is for this individual, sort of like the feeling you get when conversation and connection feels kind of easy and effortless, like you know you're going to be best buds. And she's using kind of like a more of a friendship example, or just an example of when you're just socializing in general. Here's another top comment. Yeah, this is a challenge in dating that's hard to manage, in part because no one is just going to click with everyone they date on a social level, and also because people have varying degrees of how important immediate physical attraction is to them. When I was dating, physical looks made it into the equation, but they weren't make or break it. However, if I didn't have physical attraction plus another thing, yeah, I wasn't going to see that person again. For example, there was a guy I went out with and he was fun. We had a good conversation, but he was kind of overweight and a bit unkempt looking on the date. And he lived far away from where I did, and I don't drive. So ultimately, that was a no. I would have been willing to go out again if he lived closer or if he was really physically attractive, but really the distance already made it borderline unsustainable. So I would really need something else to push me to see him. Interesting. So someone else kind of talking about the, physical attraction is a variable. It's maybe not everything to this person, but there's other variables that kind of are important as well. Like just physical distance, proximity to someone, that can be a pretty big barrier. If you're living on, hours away from each other or states away from each other, it can be hard. Keeping in mind that the previous poster said about it being work. Then thinking about your original post, I'd say ask yourself if being around these women work for you. You are putting in the effort to channel your personality to their liking and to show interest in them, but it sounds like that's work for you because it's not happening naturally. That can be sensed and become a turn-off. People look for genuine connection. Work on your confidence / personality / body to better yourself, not to find a mate, and you'll have better success. That's an interesting comment. I hadn't considered that, this individual is presenting himself in a way that doesn't fully seem authentic because he's trying so hard to have a certain type of personality or, show interest in these women that he's dating, that, again, this term, like it's not happening naturally, but what could be more natural than just showing up as your authentic self and being yourself and showing genuine curiosity in other people and asking the questions that are important to ask on dates and all of those things. So I think there's some really valid points there. It's really interesting top comments on this one. Let me know your thoughts. I actually would really like to know from our viewers what they think about the concept of chemistry, of the spark. Is that super important? How do you measure that? How do you know if that's happening? Is it as important as some of the other variables we've discussed tonight? I'm genuinely curious. It's one of those topics I think whenever I bring it up with people I know can kind of create some debate, but would love to hear what your thoughts are. Leave a comment below. Until the next time, I will see you then.